Hello, my name is Alistair Greener. I'm a trustee with Albourne Recreation Centre, otherwise known as ARC. On the 29th of November last year, we held a village consultation where we invited everybody to come along and listen to the proposals that we have for Palmer's Field. We recorded that meeting, but the video wasn't particularly clear, and certainly when you looked at the slides, they didn't come out terribly well. So what we've done is now put together this presentation, which is the exact same presentation, but in a format that hopefully will be very clear and you'll be able to see the slides clearly. So that's what I'm going to do over the next 30 minutes, is to give you an idea of what we are proposing for Palmer's Field. And we are a group of trustees. We are just enthusiastic people who want to make sure that the village has what it needs, which is sport and recreation facilities. Albourne is an amazing village. I've lived here for over 20 years. I love the village. We're great for our wonderful shops. We have two great pubs. We have a phenomenal school, our heritage centre, and so many great things about this village. But the one thing we have not done very well for a very long time is looking after sport. And we want to put that right. We want to create sports facilities for this village, for our community, where they will be able to be enjoyed by everybody, all ages, all abilities. We have a mission statement that it's very much a project for the people of Albourne, by the people of Albourne. And we just want to make sure that our youngsters aren't having to be driven to Ramsbury, to Marlborough. We've heard of cases of people being driven to Swindon and further afield. So by having these facilities in our village, what a great opportunity to not only save a huge amount of time, of course, there's massive environmental benefits too. So we have come up with a comprehensive plan. We've been consulting with the village and people, individuals and groups for many years now, ever since the lease was granted to ARC back in 2015. As you may be aware, a lease was granted to ARC in 2019 that enabled ARC to then proceed and to look at what it has planned for the future. So we've spent a long time consulting with people, getting ideas, talking to architects, talking to potential funders to get an idea of what we feel would be great for Albourne. But these are your ideas. These are ideas that have come from the village. And this is just the first stage of the consultation. This is by no means a conclusion. This is no means what we are going to build or what we're going to do. We need the backing of Albourne to enable this to happen. So this is just the next stage. All the information we've collated so far has got us to this point. And now we are ready to present these plans to you. And then we will have a further consultation period to enable lots of feedback, lots of questions, and also changes to what maybe we haven't reflected yet, what people want. Maybe that will become even more clear as time goes on. So let me go through the presentation with you that was seen by villagers. We had about 80 people who turned up in November, and this video will show you the exact same presentation that was shown then. So I'm just going to share the screen, and then you'll be able to see for yourself what we said to the villagers. So this is our plan. This is what we're looking to do. So first of all, this is Palmer's Field. It's the bit in the bottom left-hand part of your screen. This is the bit that was granted to the village of Albourne by the Palmer family in 2004. And it was given in perpetuity for the exclusive use of sport and recreation in Albourne. Meanwhile, you have Sutherfield. This is sometimes known as the current playing field over here. So this is Farm Lane, and this is the entrance to houses in this area. And then, of course, you have Southard Lane going up here towards Ewan's Hill. And these are the existing tennis courts, which are the open ones run by Albourne Parish Council. So that's where we're looking at. So let's look at the actual individual elements. So this is the Palmer's Field that ARC have a lease on, but we also have a lease on this section. And this is the parking and access track. We already have, thanks to Albourne Parish Council, we already have planning permission for this section where we can have parking for 27 cars and we can have access to the field. There will be no parking on the field at all. There will just be special exceptions for people delivering, dropping off maybe for disabled users, and certainly if any users want to pick up equipment and so on. But essentially there will be a gate across this bit here, and that will be the parking area, and this will be the access track only. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So let's have a look at in a little bit more detail. This is the parking area that we have, the access track. This is the gate that I mentioned, and parking here for 26 cars. Some concern has been raised about the amount of parking, whether that will be sufficient. And the parish council, of course, hold the ownership of the rest of Sutherfield, so we would need to consult with them should there be any need for any extra parking, and that's a conversation that will be had as and when that time comes. So that's the area that we already have planning permission for. These are those plans, and this is the entrance into Palmer's Field itself. So what are we proposing on Palmer's Field? Well, this is what we have on Palmer's Field. This is what we are proposing. As you can see, there will be a football pitch. This will be to an FA standard, a Football Association standard. And the reason that's really important is to become part of any village league, we need to comply with certain sizes, dimensions, runoffs, and so on. So this is the premium size that will give us that access, not only to be able to be part of village league, but also to potential funding from the Football Association as well. It will also double up as a rugby pitch. In our initial surveys that we've done with people within the village, there is a huge demand for football, not so much demand for rugby at this point. So although in the future we'll be able to play rugby there, that's probably not going to be the intention straight away. We've also been talking to Ramsbury Football Club, who some of you might be aware, they've already had to come to Sutherfield to play because of the excess demand that they have. And in fact, a huge amount of not only players, but also coaches and so on already come from Albourne. So that would be a partnership that will continue, and we will effectively be affiliated to Ramsbury. Then we have what we call a mugger court, a multi-use games area. This is something that came up in our discussions with members of the community, that there was a huge demand for an area where you could play all year round. It would be floodlit, and it can be divided into two sections, and it will enable all sorts of sports, from five-a-side football to hockey to maybe tennis practice and basketball and so on. So a lot of different sports can be played on this, and we would choose a surface that would suit most of the different needs that would be required. It will be one of those areas, as you've probably seen before, where there's a fence around it, and then obviously people would have access to it. There is something similar, which is about half the size in Ramsbury at the moment, and again, they have expressed a lot of interest in having access to a bigger mugger court, which is exactly what this would be. We will have a perimeter track where absolutely we'll be encouraging dog walkers and members of the community to walk and enjoy the perimeter track. We're going to put some exercise equipment around the edges as well, so people can use it for exercise as well as maybe just walking their dogs. We'll be setting up a working group with dog walkers to see how we can best work with dog owners in the village to make sure they get as much enjoyment out of the area as possible as well. So that will go all the way around the perimeter, all the way along the Bourne or Brook, and around the whole area. So it'll be a good area for people to enjoy. A lot of feedback about the zip wire already, that people would really like the zip wire to stay, and we've moved things around to enable that to happen as well. So what else will there be there as well? There will also be, in addition to that, there will be the pavilion. This is what the pavilion would look like. And again, just so you can see the positioning of it, it's literally, you'd be coming into Palmer's Field and it'll just be there on the left-hand side. It is part of the covenant of the field that the lower part, the east side of the field where the football pitch is, that there would be no building there. So we've just moved it just a little bit north of that area. And again, the football pitch will be to the east, and there will be, again, as per the covenant that we have, there would be no parking provision on the field itself. So the pavilion itself would look something like this. This is the initial designs we've had drawn up by architects. We've also been talking to some modular building companies, and what they can do is they can build this section by section in a factory. It becomes a lot cheaper that way, but also means the least disruption to people living by and also to the village generally, because they would build it all off site and then bring it to the site, and the whole building would be up literally within a few weeks. It's an incredible process that they actually do. On the back of it, where I'm pointing with the arrow now, that's the back part of the building, and that we would like to see covered in something like sedum, something that's very green. So for anybody who can see that from the back, they would have a reasonably pleasant view. And the front, because it faces south, they have the solar panels, so that the building itself can actually generate a huge amount of its own power. Now, the solar panels would not be sufficient for the changing room showers and so on, so we'd be looking at ground source heat pumps for that. But the great news is that apparently, according to all the experts, creating a carbon neutral building is actually no more expensive than a regular building of traditional construction. So we'd be looking at having something that, once it was built, would be completely carbon neutral and would be reliant for its power from the electricity generated from the solar panels and also from the ground source heat pump. So let's take a look inside the building. By the way, first of all, this is what you can see from the sides, and you can see here the one on the left hand side, that is what you would see as you come into Palmer's Field, and then the other side is what you would see from the bottom where the football pitch is. Inside, you can see it's quite cutting edge. It's very modern, very open, very spacious, and there's potential because of we're probably going to go towards the modular building method, and certainly initial suggestions make that sound really good, and we can just add to that as we need to if there is demand in the future, which is really positive. Inside the building, you can see here it's quite a complex layout. So let's go to the different areas one by one so you can see how it all works together. The first area is the sports space. And you can see there, again, we comply with full FA regulations where we have 2 changing rooms. We also have toilet facilities for players. We also have 2 referee rooms, and one of them would also double up as a treatment room. And this is all what we would need, A, to be part of Village League, but also to get funding from the FA. And they've already, Sport England have already made some very encouraging sounds towards the project. One of the things that we are very aware of is child welfare, and also to make sure that we have zones in the building so that people can be in separate sections without having to worry about other people getting access to it. So the changing rooms would have the main entrance coming in the front, so that's the side. So this is the car park area, and coming in here, you would enter into this section here. All the doors will have digital key locks on them so that it will be perfect for safeguarding. And then this area will be completely sealed, another door down this end and doors out the back to be able to get onto the playing fields themselves. So that's the sports area, and actually per square foot, the sports facilities are the most expensive to create. The other spaces are a lot better value to do, but and given the nature of the complexities of plumbing and so on, the sports area is the most complex. This is what we are calling our social area. So we plan to have refreshment facilities for people. We're certainly not going to be running a full-scale cafe like the post office or Time at the Forge. We're going to be running a fairly basic teas, coffees, maybe bacon sandwiches when there's football going on, or cakes or something like that, but nothing that would head towards a cafe territory. More just refreshments to support any activity that's taking place in the venue. And in fact, we've had discussions with both Tessa and Eddie at the post office and cafe, and also with Kate Hart at the time at the Forge, and they're both very supportive of the project, because also not only is it a very different offering, but also the timing when we will be open would be very different as well. So it would be there to look after people who want to take advantage of the facilities, but also it'll be open for a couple of hours a day for anybody who's walking dogs or so on. They'll be able to come in and have a coffee and a biscuit or something like that while they're there. This area also then opens up to these other areas, which gives us the potential of being able to let out the space for bigger functions. This area is called the Arts and Recreation Space, and this is where we could have anything from dance classes, we could have children's parties in here, there could be art classes, there could be literally anything there at all, and this would be available for private hire. Again, for safeguarding purposes, there would be a separate toilet for just that area, so that would make it extremely safe from everywhere else, and these bifold doors would close to the social area and then to this area, which is the music space. As you may have heard, Auburn Band have shown a lot of interest in joining the ARC project, because they would have the advantage of increased storage. They wouldn't have to put all of their instruments away, and they'd have direct access to the door of the main entrance. They have said that they are interested at this stage, but that's not necessarily going to say that they are definitely coming in with us. There's an ongoing discussion, and certainly by the time we get to a planning position phase, we will be asking them again whether they would like to be part of the project or whether they've decided it's not for them, and we will readjust the plans accordingly. But this would be a space not only for Auburn Band, but also others in the village who want to do music practice, maybe youngsters who have a band, or even for that matter, somebody wanting to use it as a recording space. Because the acoustics are going to be so well managed for the space, not only to keep the noise within the building so that it doesn't disturb others outside the building, but also they get perfect acoustics as well. We would work with those experts to make sure that we get the right balance for them in that space. So for example, if Auburn Band did come into the project and they wanted to have open concerts for people, we could open up the arts and recreation room, and that would provide a nice audience space as well. So it becomes a very flexible space. But as you'll see in a while, this is all very much a part of the financial package that we sort of really need to be able to earn money, to be able to support the whole project. We need money coming in from alternative sources. And we'll talk a little bit more about the impact on the other spaces in the village in a while. But let's now have a look a little bit more at that whole building. So how does it all fit in? And as you can see there, it's the pavilion settles very neatly into that particular spot. So let's have a look at the finances of this. As you can see, this is quite an ambitious project, to say the least. And it will be expensive, not only to build, but also to run, because that's just the nature of these buildings. So we've come up with a package, not just with what the building is offering, but how it's going to be built, to try and make sure we get the best possible value, not only to attract charitable donations, but also for major core grant funders. So let's have a little look at that finance. As you can see, that is a huge amount of money. 2.55 million is a huge amount of money, and we recognise that. And we're certainly not underestimating the challenges of raising that kind of money, which we'll come to in a moment. We've split it up into the different sections there as well. But to give you some idea of how much things cost today, for example, if you've been to the football the football pavilion at Ramsbury, if you were to build that exact same structure today, that would cost in the region of £1 million, given the nature of the way things work. But of course, we also have to get services to the area and so on. Then we look towards the funding of this. We've already had some great discussions. Fortunately, we have Mike Rodd on our core team, and Mike has a huge amount of experience with fundraising with his work at Croft and Beam Engine, and they've raised a huge amount of money there. So he's already enabled a few conversations with funders. So we feel pretty confident that we will be able to raise through grant providers to just over 2 million. One of the ways that it seems to work today is that you get one major grant funder on board, and then lots of other funders will join in. So it's a case of getting that first funder, but this will be as a result of multiple grants from multiple different providers. And then we will have donations and donations in kind through work and so on. We've had already many local businesses who've already expressed an interest in helping us where they can as well, for which we are truly grateful for when that time comes up. So that's the funding of the build cost. But what about the running costs? Well, we've divided this into fixed and variable costs. And the reason we've done this is because if, heaven forbid, there is another pandemic, or we're not able to use the building for any stages, we want to give you an idea of how much it costs to physically run, and then with capacity. So, for example, fixed costs, if we don't have any income, although there might be some residual income from maybe energy we create through the solar panels and ground source heat pump, but it would still cost us £14,000 a year just to maintain the building as it is. The variable costs, they are so much greater because, of course, that now is down to the costs that we incur as a result of people using the building. So that's why the variable costs are so much more. And that would be raised by, first of all, the sports facilities income. So that's the multi-use games area and also the football pitch. That would bring in just over 33,000. The pavilion income is 32,000. You can see that's quite a sizable amount. And the reason for that is our ability to use the space for different elements and different facilities. And that gives us quite a good income, including, of course, the cafe. And then we'll need other sources of income, including fundraising activities and so on, to the tune of between £2,000 and £3,000 a year. So that gives you a rough idea of what we're looking at, and that's with everything going. So having seen the finances, we recognize again that is a huge task to be able to do that. But of course, it's not just the money that we, of course, are aware of in Auburn. We're also aware of the impact on other venues and other members and groups in our community. First of all, the Memorial Hall. And of course, we recognize that if the band decide to come to the Arc building, the Arc Pavilion, that will have an impact on the Memorial Hall. However, we do recognize that there is also some demand in the village which isn't currently being met, certainly from some of the anecdotal feedback we've had. One of the things we want to do to minimize the impact on the Memorial Hall is we will guarantee that we will always charge more. The fees will be higher so that the Memorial Hall becomes the default place to go. If you want to hire a space, you'd go to the Memorial Hall because it will be cheaper. It's also in the center of the village. It has that massive advantage. And also what we're offering is a different kind of offering. It's a different building, it's a different shape, it's a different feel to the building. So although we will work with the Memorial Hall as much as we can to mitigate any impact at all, we will do our absolute best to ensure that the impact is minimal on the Memorial Hall, which is such a valued asset for the village. We've already mentioned that the Post Office, Cafe and Time have already supported us hugely, and don't feel there'll be any negative impact on them at all. In fact, they, along with other businesses in the village, have recognized that with new people coming to the village, actually there will be a benefit, whether they are Airbnbs, whether it's Post Office, or whether it's the cafe, or indeed the pubs in the village, that actually more people in the village coming will benefit them. And likewise, the hours that we will have with the pubs versus the cafe and post office and Time are very different. So again, we hope that that will have a very minimal impact, and in fact, as somebody has suggested, we'll work the other way and actually support them as well. Then we move on to the other area, which is, of course, the local residents. And again, we will work with local residents to make sure there's as minimum impact as we possibly can. One of the things we want to do is to make sure that regarding parking, which we recognise is a concern, is something that we will monitor very carefully, but we will be really working hard with all the groups who use the facility to make sure that people are car sharing, that people are using bikes and walking and so on as much as they possibly can. So for example, there'll be a bike rack just outside the pavilion, and there'll be other facilities to encourage people to walk wherever possible, to have that minimum impact on local residents. And of course, the other thing is that we will have the acoustics of the building will be such that there will be minimal noise coming out of the building. Also, part of the terms of our lease is that we will not be able to function after 10 o'clock at night. Even if we hire out the spaces, there will not be any functions taking place after 10 o'clock at night, again, reducing the impact on anybody locally. Dog walkers, as I mentioned, we're going to encourage a working group with dog walkers, so they become very much a part of the process of developing the proposals on Palmer's Field. So we look forward to working with them to make sure that they get the most out of the area as well. And then, of course, we have the environment. Well, as I mentioned, it's great. We are hoping to have a carbon neutral building. It's going to be great that people won't have to drive to Marlborough, to Ramsbury, to Hungerford, to Swindon. So that will have a major impact as well on the environment. We are also working with the carbon neutral group to make sure that we have lots of wilded spaces in the field, and that we will work with local groups to make sure that what we have there will have the best impact on the environment and will create a lovely space, not just for sport and recreation, but also for people just to enjoy in the village. And then, of course, parking traffic, we know is a concern. And again, as I've mentioned already, we will do everything that we can to make sure that people use other forms of transport rather than just car to actually get to use the facility. It has been suggested that 26 cars as a space won't be enough, and this will be something that we will have ongoing discussions with the Albourne Parish Council to see how we can work with that, and a lot of that will be part of the planning stage of the whole proposal. We are passionate about this being a facility for primarily Albourne residents. Much as we welcome people coming in from other areas, we will have two things to encourage Albourne residents. Number one, anybody who's wishing to use any of the facilities, if they are from Albourne, within Albourne, they will have a lower rate that they would pay than people from out of Albourne. And although, having said that, for the use of the space, that will still be more than the Memorial Hall. We're also looking at helping through a grant process to help members of our community who maybe struggle financially, and we will try our best to help them so that they can also have access to the sporting facilities as much as anybody else. So this is something that we are going to be working on as well. But Albourne will absolutely have priority. They will get the best rates, and they will also have priority on all of the facilities that we have on Palmer's Field. So let's have a look at the timeline. What are we looking at? When is this all going to happen, this exciting project? Well, we had our first consultation, public consultation in November 2021. And of course, that was as a result of the huge amount of consultation that we had done up until that point. But this is the first part of the open consultation with everybody. So from there, in March, we look to be drawing up final plans. We are having, I can announce this now, we are going to be having more meetings between now and March, including the 12th of February, which will be an open afternoon in the Memorial Hall, where you'll be able to come along and speak to the trustees and have a chat to us about the proposals, put forward your questions if you have any concerns and so on. We'd really love to hear from you. One thing we should say is that if we don't have the backing of the village, if the village doesn't support this for whatever reason, then this is a project that just plain and simply won't happen. People often talk to us about the sustainability of the project. You know, what happens if it starts well and then doesn't continue? One of the important aspects of funding is that if we don't create a sustainable project, if we don't create a sustainable plan, the funders will not give us the money in the first place. So the sustainability is very much a part of what we're going to do. But this will all come out, as you'll see, on the 12th of February. And again, we will be having more consultations in March. And ideally, we would like to come up with our final plans towards the end of March. Once we've done that, we will then apply for planning permission. Once you have seen, the village will have seen the final plans before we put in that planning permission. Planning permission hopefully will take a fairly short amount of time. We hope that maybe sometime in the summer or towards autumn that we will get planning permission granted. And that's the point that we start applying for major grant funding, because we now have an asset of planning permission. We have the backing of our community. So that's the point that we can really start going to the major grant funding bodies to get as much as we possibly can. So that will start literally as soon as we have that planning permission. In theory, we will break ground a year later. So in just over a year's time, we could, in theory, start the project. Now, obviously, this is a target. A lot of this depends on how successful we are at raising the funds, how long the consultation process takes place. But this is our plan. This is what we would like to do. So then we finish a year later in the spring of 2024, when the building will be complete and the whole area will be open for everyone to use. So that's our plan. That's our proposal that we hope will take place here in Auburn. And we're very excited about what we have here, because it will make a massive difference to the village of Auburn, and indeed for surrounding villages as well. From, Baden, it'll help Ramsbury cope with the overflow of the demand that they have, and so on. So this is our plan. This is what we're looking to do. You can find out more about all of this on our website, arc-auburn.org.uk. We will be putting our plans up on there for you to see. And we also would love you to be involved with further engagement. So you will see, as we've been doing for the last few years, you'll see articles in the Dabchick. You can also sign up to our newsletter. You'll see that on the front page of the ARC website. We will keep you fully updated through that, and obviously a little bit more detail than we can maybe in the Dabchick articles. Of course, we observe all GDPR regulations. We send out maybe once a month, we send out newsletters, and that might increase slightly when the project is underway. But at the moment, it's round about once a month that we send out some form of newsletter. You can follow us on Twitter. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and we have just started our own YouTube channel as well. So there'll be lots of videos posted in due course on there as well. Plus, you can already help us. We would love you to subscribe to our newsletter. All of these things help us when it comes to major grant funders, because they love anything that shows our consultation, our involvement of the local community. And yes, we will be having fundraising activities in due course. And yes, we will be hoping that people will be very generous and help us to raise as many funds as we possibly can. But you can do something now which costs you absolutely nothing, costs us nothing. And this is it. It's Amazon Smile and Easy Funding. Again, if you go on our website, you'll see on our funding page, you'll see both of these. Now, we've already raised a few £100s. I know it's not a lot, but it all helps. And it doesn't cost anybody anything. So if you look up Easy Funding and you look up Amazon Smile, make sure you choose ARC as your preferred charity, and that way you can start helping us earn even more money. And I think it's literally maybe 4 or 5 of us who've signed up already, and we've already raised a few £100s. So we could raise a lot of money through this way, and it all helps. That's it. At this point, during the main consultation, we then took questions from everybody in the hall. If you would like to ask your questions, please do, and you can do that info@arc-auburn.org.uk. go on the website and you'll see the email address there as well. And please do engage with us. Sign up to the newsletter, and please do come to as many of the different consultations as possible. We welcome all your feedback. We recognize not everybody is going to agree with us about everything that we're proposing at this stage, which is why the consultation is so, so important. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and we look forward to chatting to you again very, very soon. Bye for now.